I'm learning Portuguese, and part of my Portuguese studies has been watching a bunch of Brazilian TV. And so the main source of entertainment out of Brazil are the novelas, right? I guess soap operas is how you'd call them. They're just basically like TV series that go on for, it's really crazy actually. It's like one season will be like 200 episodes, but it'll air every single day or like 6 days a week until the end. I mean, especially for me, I'm used to like HBO series where you get 10 episodes every 3 years. And so when I first sort of discovered like these novellas, these super long, these series that give you an episode, that give you an hour-long episode every single day for the better part of a year, I didn't even, for the longest time I was learning Portuguese, I didn't even bother trying one because I was like, they're just going to be trash. It's just going to be, there's no way you can write something well written and produce something well made in that quantity of time. I can't believe I didn't just try one earlier, because yes, I mean, sure there are trashy ones, but they somehow make it work. They somehow, I mean, there's some like really incredible stories, some really engaging stories, some really thoughtful stories, very entertaining as well, and just silly. And I don't know what they're doing down there in Brazil, but they have a method, they have a system, and I mean, honestly, HBO could learn a thing or two. One thing that's interesting though is there might be other competitors, but the main sort of TV network is Global, right? Global, and they have the main novellas. They're like the big TV station. And I don't know how contracts work with the actors. I don't know if maybe the actors have contracts or what the situation is, but what ends up happening is a lot of the main actors, there's like a few sort of big name famous actors, and they just show up in every single one, over like their whole careers. So I mean, since I'm watching a bunch, and I'm watching a bunch at the same time, watching a bunch from a bunch of different time periods. So I've got like one from 1985, one from 1999, a few from the 2000s, a couple from 2010s. I'm watching one that just started like last week or something, and a lot of them have like these same actors in all these series from these different time periods. So I'm able to see them, like when she's the young 20-something receptionist, when she's the mom going through the divorce, when she's just the role of the grandma. And I think one of the things that struck me is just how the difference that 10 years makes, just how quick the difference one decade makes, right? You go from one decade to the next one. In one decade he's the young hotshot, youthful, full of energy, like super attractive guy that all the girls want and everything. And then one decade later, he's in another series just playing the role of the dad. He's just the dad, right? Nothing special. He's a little low on energy, letting his beard go a little too much, a little out of touch sometimes. One moment you'll have like the mom who's like super attractive, and she's like cheating on her husband, and she's like all the interactions she has with guys, or these guys end up falling for her, and then one decade later, now she's the same actress. She's just playing the role of grandma. She's just the grandma, and she looks like a grandma, and she reminds me of my grandma, and it's like, it's a little scary, just how quickly one decade, and a decade's not that much. I mean, 3 years is a blink of an eye, so a decade is just 3 blinks of an eye, plus 1 year. It's simple math. There is interesting cases though as well, where because of the character the actor is playing, one decade later, they actually feel a lot younger. Like there's the most famous actor. His name is, I want to say like Murilo Benício, something like that. Murilo Benício. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but he's kind of like the Leonardo DiCaprio of Brazil. He's like the big name. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I think it was 2012 or something. 2014, 2012. He was in Avenida Brasil. He was which I think is pretty much the most famous novella ever. It's been dubbed in languages all over the world. We don't really get dubs from like Brazilian, probably because we get like so much TV made in the United States that there's no need for us to like dub stuff from other countries. But I was looking at a list. There's like hundreds of countries that have dubbed Brazilian novellas. They tend to be like some of them can be really big hits worldwide. But this actor I'm talking about, he was like playing the role of this sort of dad. He's actually supposed to be an ex-professional soccer player, but he's kind of got that washed kind of look, always wearing sort of like a tracksuit, kind of scruffy beard, kind of out of it a bit, and just, he feels old, he feels slow. He felt that in this show, and he's also in this series that I mentioned, that I just started watching, that just came out. And here he is 12 years later, and yet he feels so much younger because he's got this force, this youth, this strength. I guess it's interesting on one hand how much a decade changes, and yet how it doesn't necessarily have to dictate like your energy levels, how you hold yourself, how you present yourself, how those things can be lost and found at any age, and how it's like, yeah, they do tend to have like energy levels tend to go down as you age, but not necessarily. There's this saying that you hear. I don't know if I've ever actually heard in real life, but I've probably heard it like a dozen times in movies or TV shows, where you'll hear usually like a father, say to a daughter who's growing up, "You'll always be my little girl." Something along those lines. "You'll always be my little girl." And it's hard to relate to when you're like a kid. It kind of feels like something they just say, like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cute that you say that." But I mean, obviously you can tell your daughter's 25 and not 5 anymore, right? But this actually happened to me in a way with, well, I guess I'll explain it from the beginning. In one of these shows that I was watching, this one was actually also Avenida Brasil, the really famous one from back in 2012 or whatever. There's this character, and in the show he's, I don't know, probably like 18, 19, 20, 21, somewhere around that age, like early 20s. And he's really prominent in the show, and because it's a novella, it goes on for hundreds of episodes, well, a couple hundred episodes. You really get to, like, I really feel like I know this person, like on a level that is akin to like a close friendship. Like I've seen this guy every day for like the past few months, and it's like I know like the way he thinks, the way his movements, I can guess what he's probably going to say in a situation, his facial expressions, right, the way he walks, all of it. And so recently I started another show, and it was more recent, and he was like 10 years older, right? And now he's like this 30-year-old man, and he's like all like an adult and whatnot, and in my mind I'm like, oh, you'll always be that 20-year-old version of you, the one that I knew so well. Like, I can see that technically you're like a 30-year-old, but no, that's not. You're not actually 30. You're still 20. And for the first time in my life, I was able to see like, oh, I see how this works now. When they say, oh, you'll always be my little girl, like, I don't know if it's because like youth has, maybe, I don't know if it's like the first impression you have of the person, maybe, or because you spent more time with them when they were younger, or I don't know exactly why that is. Another thing that's interesting is that I'm able to see, like, that 20-year-olds do become 60-year-olds. And, like my grandma, for example, like, on a theoretical level, I understand that at one point she used to be 20 years old, right? But there's also a part of me that's like, like, would I bet my life on the fact that she was at one point 20 years old? Like, probably not. It's like, what would that even look like? Like, my grandma having, like, the thoughts of a 20-year-old, the movement, the laugh of a 20-year-old, the giggle of a 20-year-old. It's like, I'd have to see it to believe it, And, of course, there's pictures, right? You've got, like, picture of grandma. But it's like, is that really grandma? It's like, But with these shows I've been watching, like, I spend time with the 20-year-old version and the 60-year-old version, right? It's a lot different to see them moving, speaking, right? And I guess, future generations will have that, right? Future generations will be able to look on grandma's phone and literally see videos of grandma from when she was 20. That's trippy. That's gonna be trippy. That's weird to think about. I think what's interesting though is how much they share. I'll watch the 20-year-old version and the 60-year-old version, and like there's such a like you see like, oh, there is such a similarity in the mannerisms, the way they speak. It's just kind of, it's painted with a different type of brush almost. You know, you start to see, oh yeah, this does eventually become that. It's not just theoretical. This is real life. Because I mean, like, you know, like, I understand theoretically that at one point I will be 70, assuming I don't die before that. But it's like, will I though? Because no one my age has ever been 70, ever. I was watching this talk show also from Brazil, and it's this funny show. It's called Que Historia Es. They basically just, there's this host that just brings on people to tell crazy stories. There's this one woman who came on, and she was talking about this little business she has set up. Is it volunteer or is it business? It's a little system she has set up in the world. Essentially, there's this vibrator shop in her town, and there's a lot of people who, or there are people who want a vibrator, but they don't want to be seen. You know, walking into the shop, picking something out. You know, if they see like someone from their family or friend, it might be a little awkward. So she created this vibrator group, right, where they sort of pick out what they want online. She goes into the store, she buys it, and then I guess there's a supermarket right across the street. So then she puts the chosen, you know, toys into these brown paper bags, goes into the supermarket, and then like drops them off. Like she'll just like stash it behind the olive oil, or, you know, put it next to the this is real, put it next to like the oranges. And then it's at like a set time, and the ladies whose property that is, they'll sort of follow her through the store, and then when she drops it, they'll like follow in right behind her and like pick it up. It's a whole like James Bond level thing. But it's this group of, you know, in this particular group that she does, it's for people in their 70s. For I think it's all women. But yeah, women in their 70s. And her oldest customer is 92 years old. And that story, I don't know, it made me really happy. Not because, I mean, it's not like I'm happy that 90-year-olds use vibrators, but it's just the idea that, I don't know, talking about age and how quickly life goes by and how quickly a decade is, it's like, it gets kind of scary thinking about how short life is. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it feels like there's no pleasure, no enjoyment for so many decades of life, right? You look at a lot of people who are middle age and onwards, and it just, a lot of times it feels like just this empty hole of nothingness, you know? And when you hear little stories of people like that, like a 9-year-old who still buys vibrators and stuff, it's like, oh, like it's a choice, you know? Like you don't have to stop finding pleasure and experiences and enjoyment and living and laughing and loving at any age. And I think part of what makes life feel so short is like this feeling that it's like, you know, maybe like, oh, after, I mean, it's all depending on how old you are, you know? I mean, if you're like 5, there's probably a lot of 5-year-olds who feel like life ends at 20 years older. And then, you know, 10-year-olds who feel like life ends at like 25, and then 20-year-olds who feel like, oh, at 30, I'm done. And these numbers keep changing, but depending on, right, you keep giving yourself a little more buffer space the older you get, but it's like, there doesn't need to be any buffer space at all. Like life can end when you actually die. And there are people at the oldest ages living the shit out of life. It's just, I think why is it so uncommon? I don't know, that's a great question. It's a video for another day. But I'd like to think that if you want to keep living, you definitely can.